most of these encounters with the good folk, as they were often called, these things tended to be really human looking, maybe shorter, sometimes tiny, but oftentimes not that much different from regular people, but with, that fey characteristics that set them apart. But we don't believe in that kind of stuff now. Now we accept the idea that we could be being visited by extraterrestrials from other
A
planets.
gray, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Gray or
And
reptilian or whatever.
well, I mean, and you even have the extremely human-looking extraterrestrials, the Nordics, as they're called, that were made popular with, say, like the contactees from the 1950s. Well, they never really went away. We still get those kinds of reports that of very human, maybe long, just but angelic looking almost, long blonde hair, beautiful blue eyes, tall, other kinds of characteristics. But again, are we really being visited by, these beautiful extraterrestrials, or are we dealing with a phenomena that is earthbound, or at least within this, and when I say earthbound, I don't necessarily mean just a physical material world, but earthbound with whatever then other realities associate with, with the earth, but not nuts and bolts spaceships coming from other planets with, engineers and scientists and explorers, even though they're passing themselves off as that. Preys on people. We like to think that we are at the top of the food chain. Well, maybe we're not. Maybe there are other creatures on this planet that can look like us and blend in with us for the purpose, basically, of eating us. That we are probably dealing maybe with, maybe a number of different things. I don't want to say species or what have you, because you're right. I mean, there are encounters with beings that do seem to be not from this reality. That for somehow that they are able to enter into ours, interact with us, and then go back where they came from. Sometimes it seems like some of these things maybe do so inadvertently. I speculated in the book that when you have these really bizarre types of Bigfoot types of encounters, that we may not be dealing with a flesh and blood creature, like a bear or a cougar or something like that, that we have something that is able to cross that boundary from their world to ours, maybe accidentally or maybe with a natural ability, but they can't stay long. But while they're here, by all intents and purposes, they seem to be physical, except that they seem to have that ability to vanish at will or not be seen. How not to be seen. That seems to be a good characteristic with a lot of these things. That's one of the fascinating aspects, of the phenomena is, some people would say that it's a deceit, a deception that has gone on for centuries. And there does seem to be, lies and deceit on what is going on. But again, that's our interpretation of the phenomena. So I mean, it's very difficult to go and put black and white judgment stuff. Now again, there could very well be physical nuts and bolts spacecrafts from other planets visiting us. There could very well be actual physical primates, hominid Bigfoots running around in the woods somewhere. However, this phenomena that we're talking about has a tendency to mimic those things. If those things are real, and they may not, who knows, but whatever, the phenomena also has a tendency to create their own versions of it, which I think, that confuses a lot of people and a lot of other researchers who have a tendency then to throw those stories just out completely.
Become a member on Patreon to get full access to all exclusive content. A few of the perks is the full-length ad-free video version of the interviews, face-to-face interviews, bonus shows, and behind-the-scenes footage. You will also receive the video interview way in advance before the audio-only interview gets dropped on all platforms. Sign up and become a member today for only $3 a month. The link is in the description.
Since we spoke last time, our good friend Tim Beckley has passed. So how is everything? I know y'all are kind of research partners and things like that. How is everything like with your research collaboration? Were you able to get some of his material, just everything? And how was your life like? Because I know y'all were close friends,
Right. Oh yeah. Well, it was tough when he passed away. I'll have to admit that, because we were close friends and had been friends for a number of years. Gosh, more than 20 years. I mean, we first, it's funny because one of the first books that I ever bought through mail order from Gray Barker's Saucerian Press turned out to be a book by Tim Beckley. And it was like his first book that he wrote when he was about 15 years old. But, there's quite a bit of age difference between us. So, that book had been out for quite a while by the time, I got to be old enough to have cash and be able to write a letter to order the book. But it was, gosh, what was it? It was called Subterranean Mysteries, and
I can't keep tabs on all the books that he did, and you too. I know you got a lot of books and you co-authored a bunch of books, but yeah, I definitely miss them, man.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, well, and he was a presence in my life every day. If he would usually call on the phone every day, and if he didn't do that, he would at least send me, a couple of dozen of emails, because we were always working on stuff. That was one of the we had mutual interest in all kinds of different subjects. And when he resurrected his publishing outfit, his book publishing outfit, which was close to around the time that we reconnected again, I think that we put out a number of books every year, naturally a number of books every year, sometimes one or two every couple of months. Because not only did he have me, but he had other writers and proofreaders as well as part of his little company. That he had this mind. I'd never be able to have kept up with him if I tried to do the things that he did. But he had this mind that was just constantly going, and he always had at least two books working at the same time in various stages of production. So, and I do miss that, working on, one day I'll be working on one book, the next day I'll be working on the next one. And I miss that. And myself and people like Sean Castile and Scott Corrales have gotten together to try to produce new books in the same vein like Tim Beckley's Global Communications, but none of us quite have that. Boy, I don't know what that energy.
I know his energy.
Yeah.
And when I last spoke with him, we've emailed a pretty good bit, but only interviewed him, I think maybe twice.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe once. But we've communicated and talked on the phone a few times, especially since I've been podcasting since 2010. But his energy, I don't know how. you can call him, and then he'll be kind of moping around like, man, I feel like crap, I'm making, and he sounds terrible. But whenever you give him a few minutes to settle down, and he's like, pew, pew, I'm talking about, he's just he just hit a different level, Tim. I don't know, definitely
Yeah.
one of a kind. And I don't know where it is. Maybe I'll find it whenever you start speaking about your book here in a little bit. But was he the publisher of Steam Shovel Press?
No, no, that was Ken Thomas.
Oh yes, Ken Thomas.
Yeah, Ken
But
Thomas,
but
who also
Tim what?
recently passed away.
Oh, he died. When was that?
Yep. Oh, probably sometime over the winter, or with this past winter. It
Damn,
would have
I
been, it
did
would have
not
been,
know
yeah,
that.
yeah, it would have been late last year, 2023.
Oh man.
Yeah, yeah. Well, unfortunately, Ken, like Tim Beckley, hadn't been in the best of health for a number of years. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I have a thing with I like collecting older magazines. It's just my I don't know if I had to pick one thing that I'm a nerd when it comes to a nerd. Of course, books. Everybody that in this field does books, but
Right.
older magazines with our genre like UFOs, paranormal, ancient mysteries, conspiracies.
Mm-hmm.
But I just love collecting old magazines, and I remember seeing some of his. I haven't read all of them yet because I have so many, but Tim has a lot of articles I haven't read yet. I see his name
Oh,
on different
yeah.
magazines. I just haven't read. But let's go ahead and get into your book. Oh, everybody the reason why I brought up Tim, because first off, this first time I mean, Tim Beckley, because I knew Tim Swartz is really good friends with Tim Beckley. And I want to let everybody know that the interview will be in the link or linked in the description below for everybody to check out that interview that I thought I lost. I thought I lost that interview with Tim Beckley. And we did the interview 2017 or 18. It was somewhere around that time, and I was devastated. But I found it. I was new to Zoom. It was downloaded into some kind of weird cryptic file, or I don't know. But I found it anyway. It'll be linked in the description. So Tim, with your book mimics the others among us. It came out. What was it? March last year,
Yeah.
2023, something like that.
Yeah, it's been out about a year now.
I was wanting to get you on last year, and a lot of that I had to reschedule something. I don't. I remember you responded back, and I never. It's like I told you, it's tough sometimes having a little kid, but
Hmm.
and then sometimes I feel like I need a secretary to kind of But I do the best I can. Basically a one man show. I have a Facebook page manager that helps me out, but on the Facebook side. But what inspired you to write this book? Because, like I said, I know you've co-authored a lot of books. You've written a lot of books. Well, what made you want to go down this road?
Sure. Well, uh, it's like I said previously, myself and Sean Castile, especially, we've been trying to keep Tim Beckley's legacy going in the way that he produced books. Like I explained, I mean, just constantly had books in preparation and production, and when it came to Mimics the Others Among Us, we had just finished a book called Alien Artifacts. Which one? This was a book that had originally been started by Beckley for his global communications, but really wasn't too far along by the time he passed away. So we decided that, I mean, we had already been doing quite a bit of research for this book. Let's go ahead and finish it, like we had finished we had also, he was also working on a book about Dulce, New Mexico, and all the stories about, the secret underground bases and aliens running amok and things like that. That one was a little bit closer to being finished. So after we finished that one, we went ahead and finished Alien Artifacts.
Mhm.
And then I was thinking, especially when I was comparing the notes from Dulce, which of course deals quite a bit with these alleged alien invaders, and I was thinking about how ubiquitous this whole kind of like humanoid aspect to people's contacts with unusual beings. All right, whether they're whether they identify themselves as, aliens or, fairies or what have you. And it got me interested thinking about, all right, you have all these creatures that humanity's been interacting with for centuries. All right. Almost inevitably, they look human. Very rarely do you come across things that look just so completely alien that people really may not have been able to identify them as alien or what have you. And if you look at all the ancient mythologies, where you have the gods and demons and angels, again, they have that humanoid look to them. Usually one head, usually,
Mm-hmm.
2 arms, 2 legs. And if you try to, and of course you can't use logic when it comes to unusual phenomena. That's one of the things that makes it unusual. But if you look at these encounters logically, that if you are dealing with things that aren't human, why do they have that humanoid shape? Are they doing it for our benefit? Are they doing it for their benefit? What's the reason? And that's really what kind of got the whole idea started. So I approached our other writers, people like Scott Corrales, Nigel Watson from the UK, people like that, and I said, "Have you written
Philip
anything?"
Kinsella
Or
too, right? Philip
yes,
Kinsella. I
yes,
just interviewed him. Not to mean to cut you off. I saw his name
no,
on the
no, that's all
book.
right.
I saw his name on
Mm-hmm.
the book. Tim, that guy has a brilliant mind.
He does. He
Like
does.
he's very, like you've been on hundreds or thousands of interviews, but and you've been on some of the most top tier shows, podcasts, or
Mhm.
radio shows. He needs to be up there. Like he has a
He
brilliant
does.
mind. I really think he's underrated. And I told him that, like, you need to be on some of the top tier shows for sure.
Yeah. Well, and we had him on a show that I co-host called the Paracast with Gene Steinberg. And it was almost a, like, just, haphazard mention of this case where friends of his who had written this book about the Rendlesham UFO incident had been visited by this guy who eventually claimed to be a reptilian from another planet. Now, whether or not this guy was or not, he had some very unusual characteristics and the ability to kind of like manipulate people into doing things that he wanted them to do. The first person that he approached ended up being absolutely terrified of him, even though he looked like a normal human being. He usually wore like a long trench coat type of deal, but he seemed to be by appearance perfectly normal, but she ended up just being terrified and eventually wanted him out of her house. Yet she allowed him to stay in an extra room in her house. Other people who worked with him noticed, very odd characteristics. He seemed to be hotter than normal. It's hard to explain. He was at one point he was living in the trailer in the backyard of one person, and the trailer itself. They actually used like one of these thermometers that can read a temperature from a distance. I think
Mm-hmm.
it uses like a laser beam, and it showed that this trailer, even though it didn't have, and this was in the UK, it didn't have any internal heating to it.
Huh.
This trailer had gone up in temperature. It was over 100 degrees on a, probably like a 40 or 50 degree day outside, with no reason why. And so after after Philip told this story, got back with him and I said, this is a fantastic story and fits perfectly with this book that we're working on. Do you want to write a chapter for us? And he immediately said, oh yeah, I would love to do that because, the book that we had been talking about, that which was a reissue of a Rendlesham Forest a story, I think had a small mention of this case in it, but he had never told the full story in written form. And so you'll find that in Mimics Among Us, and it's among many, including the old mythologies, because I love to try to find connections with people who lived thousands of years ago and their experiences with the stuff that is still happening today. I think that's one of the things that skeptics tend to try to gloss over. And not so much skeptics, more like debunkers. I'm a skeptic. It's healthy in this line of work to, have a bit of skepticism, because you just get approached all the time with just, the wildest stories. But so many of these, so much of this unusual phenomena reoccurs time after time throughout the years to people who have no idea that it has occurred to other people in the past. And the further you go back, you still don't find a lot of differences to these accounts than what people are talking about today. And so that probably was the main emphasis to start production on this book. And once my writers and myself got going on this, I mean, this book, it was like what, 350 pages by the time we were done with it. So
I think the conclusion
thoughts.
I think the conclusion thoughts said close to 400 or something like that.
Something like that.
It was pushing 400. Yeah, it's not a really small book.
No, and I mean, we always try to keep, I mean, we want to edit our books so they're not a slog to try to read through. But I've had people tell me that even though it is almost 400 pages, that once they start it, they can't put it down. Because it's like, oh, what's this story about? What's this story about? Oh my God, yeah.
So your subtitle, they've been called many names throughout time: gods, angels, demons, the good folk, shapeshifters, extraterrestrials. So do you think that some of these things, or would you put like maybe archons, like a mind type parasite into this list also, Tim? Like, because whatever we're dealing with, it's not in this 3D reality. Maybe they could show up within this 3D reality, maybe they can possess certain individuals, whatever it is, or they can they can take over one's body. But over millennia, I think whatever this phenomena is, I think is that they masqueraded in many different faces.
Mm-hmm.
They show different faces to us, and I don't know how, how to put my finger on it, but I really think that, like, it's probably the same phenomena. You know what I mean? Most of, I'm not saying all, but I would say a good chunk,
Mm-hmm.
rather the ETs or archons or what some were called gods back in the day. I would say a good chunk, I can't say all, but a good chunk is whatever this phenomena is. And you have your good, your bad, and the ugly all in between. What do you think?
Right. Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, and if you go through this book, you'll find that we are probably dealing maybe with, gosh, maybe a number of different things. I don't want to say species or what have you, because you're right. I mean, there are encounters with beings that do seem to be not from this reality, that for somehow that they are able to uh, 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 enter into ours, interact with us, and then go back where they came from. Sometimes it seems like some of these things maybe do so inadvertently. I speculated in the book that, when you have these really bizarre types of Bigfoot types of encounters, that we may not be dealing with a flesh and blood creature, like a bear or a cougar or something like that we have something that is able to cross that boundary from their world to ours, maybe accidentally or maybe with a natural ability, but they can't stay long. But while they're here, by all intents and purposes, they seem to be physical, except that they seem to have that ability to vanish at will or not be seen. How not to be seen. That seems to be a good characteristic with a lot of these things. And then you have the beings that seem to be with us all the time.
Guardian angels, maybe, or
yeah, well, I mean, yeah, and again, what's a guardian angel? What's an angel? What's a demon? What's
it,
what are the gods? It's a matter of cultural interpretations. And I think that at least some aspect of this phenomena seems to work within those realms. That a couple thousand years ago, we believed in the gods and the angels and the demons, and that's the way these things presented themselves to us. Later, you had, say, like the fairies and the fae type of phenomena. Again, humanoid-looking creatures. And not the Disney-fied ones that you see, flying around with wings on their backs and stuff. Most of these encounters with the good folk, as they were often called, these things tended to be really human-looking, maybe shorter, sometimes tiny, but oftentimes not that much different from regular people, but with, that fae characteristics that set them apart. But we don't believe in that kind of stuff now. Now we accept the idea that we could be being visited by extraterrestrials from other planets.
A gray, yeah.
Yeah,
A gray or
and
reptilian or whatever.
well, I mean, and you even have the extremely human-looking extraterrestrials, the Nordics, as they're called, that were made popular with, say, like the contactees from the 1950s. Well, they never really went away. We still get those kinds of reports that of very human, maybe long, but angelic looking almost, long blonde hair, beautiful blue eyes, tall, other kinds of characteristics. But again, are we really being visited by, these beautiful extraterrestrials, or are we dealing with a phenomena that is earthbound, or at least within this and when I say earthbound, I don't necessarily mean just a physical material world, but earthbound with whatever then other realities associate with, with the earth, but not nuts and bolts spaceships coming from other planets with, engineers and scientists and explorers, even though they're passing themselves off as that. So again, we go, in the book, why? Why is this intelligence going through the trouble to interact with us, but not being upfront on their origins? That's the other part of the whole mimic phenomena, is that you never get a straight answer, it seems like. As the years go by, we've got, you could write a completely separate book on all the different places that these things say that they come from. So that's one of the fascinating aspects of the phenomena is, some people would say that it's a deceit, a a deception that has gone on for centuries, and there does seem to be, lies and deceit on what is going on. But again, that's our interpretation of the phenomena. So I mean, it's very difficult to go and put black and white judgments,
I have a
on these
theory.
things.
I have a theory. And what I love
Let's hear
about
it.
you, what I love about you, and before I tell you the theory, what I love
Okay.
about you, Tim Beckley, and of course a lot of other researchers too, but you're not afraid to speculate. You know what I mean? Because you have to, first off, if you have to use your intuition, your gut, what does your gut tell you? And then maybe people that are listening to you, and then you put that theory, whatever, on a shelf and you come back to it later. Or somebody that's listening to you speculate will grab that off the shelf for you and they can run with it and can find something that you, me, or others couldn't find that add some proof on top of that. So
Hmm.
speculation is good. But first off, before I tell you what my theory is,
All right.
were you afraid to kind of go down that road? Because you've been researching longer than I have. I'm in since '06, been podcasting since 2010. But over the years, I kind of have leaned, especially the past couple years, leaned more heavily, heavily on, on the that they are here. They've probably always been here, maybe in different dimensions or whatever. Maybe not. I'm not saying all of them aren't coming from out there.
Right.
I'm not saying that they aren't coming from out there, but I would say a vast majority is here with us. But because within this field, Tim, were you kind of timid with kind of going down that road or maybe even talking about it? Because a lot of people in this field, they think they're all coming from out there, and it's either black or white, and a lot of people think that they are coming from out there instead of here, or they're not, they're all good, they're all benevolent instead of malevolent. What's your thoughts on all that before I give you my little take?
Sure. Well, I've never been afraid to approach really any subject. When it comes to this stuff. What I always say though is that I may speculate, I may throw ideas out there, I may give examples of things that may, either support or not support, my ideas. I'm willing to look at all of it,
Mm-hmm.
but I always say that I don't believe in anything. I'm
Me
not a
too.
I'm not a believer, because once you start believing in theories and ideas, it tends to close your mind
Puts
to
limitations.
yes, to new information that comes in, and I always want to be ready to accept new information. I mean, to me, that's what it is all about. I mean, is being willing to accept new information, new ideas as they come down. So many people, you asked if I was afraid to broach some of these subjects, and there are so many researchers and investigators who have gone and really they only concentrate on one aspect. This guy only investigates UFOs, ghost, Bigfoot. That's crazy stuff, but now UFOs from other planets, yeah, that's fact. And then, you've got the Bigfoot people, some Bigfoot people who are just like, yep, Bigfoot, flesh and blood creature, that UFO stuff. Ooh, that's crazy. I'm not dealing with that. And I have my arms out,
Mm.
open. It's like, bring it in, bring it all into me, because my research over the years has shown that some way or another there seems to be an underlining unified field theory on all of this stuff. Now again, now there could very well be physical nuts and bolts spacecrafts from
Mhm.
other planets visiting us. There could very well be actual physical primates, a hominid Bigfoots running around in the woods somewhere. However, this phenomena that we're talking about has a tendency to mimic those things. If those things are real, and they may not, who knows, but whatever, the phenomena also has a tendency to create their own versions of it, which I think, that confuses a lot of people and a lot of other researchers who have a tendency then to throw those stories just out completely. Unless the story perfectly fits with whatever scenario that they have bookmarked themselves into investigating, then it's not worth researching. It's not worth taking then that extra few steps to interview the people and get all the information. Myself, on the other hand, I want to know it. If you saw a UFO and then suddenly a Bigfoot came out of the woods and climbed on board and flew away, I want to know that story. Wow, that's great. So yeah, I mean, the only thing that I would be afraid of is closing my mind off to new information, to the point where I become rigid and unmoving, like some other people or some people in the scientific community who refuses to look beyond what they learned in college. And fortunately, I think we're seeing more scientists, more academia that is willing to start at least discussing and looking into these types of phenomena in really in ways that we haven't seen for quite a while.
And I totally agree, Tim. You have to, a lot of it interconnects. It's
Mhm.
one jigsaw puzzle that makes a much broader picture. Like I'm just looking at just a few books out of, I got tons, but just a few books. Rule by Secrecy by Jim Marrs, Alien Agenda by Jim Marrs, The Gods of Eden by William Bramley, The Cancer Conspiracy, I forgot who wrote that. Bloodlines Illuminati by Fritz Springmeier. I,
Mhm.
The Terror Conspiracy by Jim Marrs. Like I, I'd cover it all. You know, you have to look at everything. You can't put limitations. Oh, I don't believe in that, so I'm just going to focus on this. I know you got to have some of your specialties that want to just, but just imagine how many brilliant minds out there that research alternative topics, that if they would have just broadened their intellect, their knowledge, as many topics as you, Tim Beckley, and others that you cover in research. Imagine where we might be today,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
but okay, here's my take. What I was going to tell you, what I
All right.
think might, and I mentioned this. I'm going to try to explain it how I did on the previous. I forgot who I had on the show. I may have been talking to Philip Kinsella. Kinsella, I think that's how you say his last name.
Mhm.
I may have been talking to him when I mentioned this. So, Aleister Crowley, you talking about like because this phenomena, whatever it is that mimics, just like saw your book, um, as shown many masks over the centuries, has shown itself in many different flavors, So, what about the past 100 years or a little over 100 years? Let's say, what do we really get? Kind of the gray, you know. So, why was that? Do you think that maybe Crowley, Crowley, with his when he was communication with the lamb being that
Mhm.
looks just like a gray, and do you think that? And he was a famous occultist, So,
Mhm.
do you think that he kind of helped insinuate or maybe push that type of thing into our subconscious? And then Hollywood, I'm not saying it was just all him, but and then Hollywood kind of gets on board because they know something's going on too, like some type of things that mimic masquerade behind many different flavors, but they put the gray, they put the alien gray into the film, and that puts into our subconscious, and then people start seeing gray aliens, but they're actually having experiences. But whatever is in the subconscious at the time of like like the past 100 years or so, which has mostly been the gray, the reptilian, the Nordics, whatever's been in the subconscious at the time of that civilization, that's what that civilization mostly sees
Hmm.
and whether it be dreams, whether it be actual encounters, but whatever is happening, Tim, just like you said, they are mimicking there or they are showing themselves, I think, how we want, how we think that they should look like. I guess through maybe how we've been, maybe I hate to say it, maybe how we've been indoctrinated through films and Hollywood and through maybe even famous occultists like Aleister Crowley. How do we know
Hmm.
it's actually a gray alien? It might be. I don't know. I hate to, like you said, I hate to say I believe.
Hmm.
It might be an actual gray little gray alien out there. I don't know, but it seems like really just the past 100, little over 100 years or so, only been seeing these types of beings, these types of aliens. But back in the day, it was fairies, it was this, it was that. You know, what do you think of all that, Tim?
Oh yeah, definitely. And what you're saying is like, cultural expectations that we expect to see now. The little big-eyed gray aliens coming from a UFO, because that's what we have been conditioned up to this point
Yes, condition.
into thinking that the aliens look like. And as you pointed out, the big-eyed gray aliens is really a relatively newcomer to the whole UFO phenomena. Up until, I think there's some other sporadic examples, but when it comes to culture, like movies, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, I think, was the first movie to ever show um, an example of the big-eyed gray aliens. There were some other films in the past, say like there were the Man from Planet X. He kind of looks like a gray. I mean, he's got kind of like that pear-shaped face. It's white, and the eyes aren't huge, but they're black and kind of oval shape. But really, in the early days of the UFO phenomenon, uh, at first it was the beautiful long-haired Venusians, and then especially starting in, I think it was like around 1952, there was a mass of UFO landings in Europe, especially like France and Switzerland, where people saw um, lots of little men, and throughout most of the 50s, then it was like little men sightings, usually in like spacesuits with the helmets. I mean, just really what you would traditionally think, an astronaut from another planet may come from. Not little green men, just little men. The little green men, that was something that was fabricated by the press. But it just goes to show you, though, I mean, yeah, even though the press was talking about little green men from Mars, there were actually not a lot of sightings of little green men. Mostly they were just kind of like gray or pasty faced. Some of them looked just like little people, just like a regular human being, just in, just miniature, mini me, so to speak. You pointed out, though, Aleister Crowley and Lamb, and his drawing of Lamb, which he did back in the, I think it was like the late 30s or early 40s. I can't remember offhand when that was.
I want to say it
But
was
boy,
even before that, Tim. I want to say
yeah,
it was like the 20s, maybe.
could be. I can't remember, offhand. But this was a, like a supernatural kind of like slash magic type of creature. If you look online, you can find his original drawing of Lamb. The thing is that his original drawing of Lamb
1918, he channeled the entity.
1918. Okay.
1918. Yes.
Yeah, well, in the drawing that you can find online, it's got like little beady eyes. His original drawing of that, it had big black eyes. But some friend of his thought that that didn't look real. It didn't look right. So he drew over it and drew like the little beady eyes. And if I guess I haven't looked very closely, but somebody told me that if you look closely, you can still see some of the remnants of the bigger black eyes, on this thing. So there, I mean, you've got one of the earliest examples, of the gray, except that this wasn't supposed to be an extraterrestrial. This was a supernatural type of being. But again, as we discussed in mimics, what's the difference? Is there a difference? Possibly not. Which makes the phenomena so confounding. And I can really understand why a lot of other researchers just throw up their hands and they don't want to deal with it anymore. It just gets too weird. And it does. But that's what interests me in all this is all these high strangeness cases. And why are they high strangeness and why are people experiencing them? You know,
You see, I'm trying to
people
go ahead, Tim. Go ahead,
Well, I was
please.
just going to say that people being people, okay, th- most of the time you would think that they would go and, say they had like a UFO sighting. Okay, I saw a light flying around in the sky. All right, okay. Or I saw my dead grandma appear at the foot of my bed. But we get a few of those, but then we also get a lot of these. I saw this strange light flying around in the sky and it landed and my dead grandma came out of it. We get stories like that. And it's no wonder that so many people are reluctant to report these kinds of experiences, because you can get laughed at enough by saying that you saw, like a strange light flying around in the sky. Well, then go and attach that my grandma was piloting it, or Grandma Elvis and Bigfoot were piloting it. I'm going to extremes there, but you go and you throw in then these encounters with dead relatives or Bigfoot or what have you. People are like, okay, I'm going crazy. I'm not going to tell anybody about this. Yet these kinds of stories persist, and in a vacuum, information vacuum as well. Most of these people have no idea that other people have had these same kind of experiences. And that's what's really interesting. If this is just people hoaxing or mistaking natural phenomena for something weird, but no, I mean, you get these same kind of stories year after year, from all kinds of different places around the world, and with very rarely do any of these people realize that other people have had similar experiences.
And just like you said, so I pulled up Lamb. Let me see if I can screen share it. Okay, you see that? Okay. And I see what you're saying here. I'm just doing an image. You see, it's almost like there was like the little gray or the black eyes could have been
Yep.
here. And that's just
Yeah.
one. And, like that's not, but you can see see right there where my
Yeah.
cursor is. It looks like I see exactly. I've heard of that, but I kind of forgot about it until you mentioned it, how it really wasn't the correct depiction that he drew. And they changed it or altered the actual image.
Mm-hmm.
But do you think that, with certain people in this community, the ones, let's say, that try to contact, you could have Stephen Greer CE5 or whatever. Do you think it could be dangerous because we don't know exactly what we're dealing with? Like
Mm-hmm.
we think that they're all benevolent entities, uh, gray, whoever, that they all mean they mean well and they're here to save us or whatever. But do you think that it's kind of dangerous to try to communicate with something whenever you don't technically 100% know what really is going on, what's going on behind the masquerade, you know?
Right. Well, I always tell people, don't go out of your way, really, to try to initiate interaction with anything along these lines, whether it's out trying to establish mental communications with the UFO people, or getting the Ouija board out and trying to contact your dead aunt and uncle. Um,
Interaction
general
could equal possession.
Yeah, obsession. I mean, I just, I've really yet to run across any good, compelling stories of people who have done this, who have ended up happy, happy and rich with a great family, because generally, when you start to try to do things like this, it can lead to an obsession, and certain aspects of this phenomena tend to then exploit that and then guide you down the path of madness, so to speak. Um, I've seen people who have been involved with researching and investigating the UFO phenomena, and not necessarily trying to initiate, contact with whatever intelligence is involved, just getting obsessed with the phenomena. And it does tend to steer your life into wrong directions. All right.
Mhm.
It's almost like the line from the movie The Mothman Prophecies, where and I'm not quoting it properly, and it's been quoted and requoted before. Like when you stare into the abyss, the abyss stares back at you. The This phenomena, whatever it is very well aware of your interest in it. And once you open yourself up to that interest, then a lot of times it has a tendency to mess with you. And, and maybe it's just because of our own psychology that we don't understand, that we're just creatures prone to this kind of obsession. But boy, I mean, I have seen a lot of people just really have their lives destroyed by this kind of stuff, to the point where they've lost their families, they've lost their homes, they're living in cars, horrible things. And and so you have to ask, did you do this to yourself, or were you helped along the way, due to your obsession with this kind of stuff? And it's probably a little bit from column A and a little bit from column B. So yeah, I mean, I definitely tell people, don't try to initiate any kind of contact. If contact is being initiated to you, be extremely wary of it. All right, because it tends to accelerate, and then pretty soon all kinds of bizarre things are happening to you. There have been cases of groups who have attempted, say, contact with the afterlife, contact with people who have passed on, try to, prove. And, it starts out, with like lights in the seance room, and then pretty soon, things are starting to appear, jewelry and other little knickknacks, and then the next thing your house is overrun with poltergeist activity, and your family has left. Because they just can't handle it anymore. And, it's the same, you see the same kind of phenomena taking place all across the board. Not just, say, again, with the contacts with the dead, but contacts with UFOs, contact with Bigfoot, any kind of strange phenomena. And again, I'll have to say, is this something that is happening? Oh, and is it something else that is causing this and is just responding to your obsessive interest in whatever, you know, or is whatever it is that you're interested in, you know,
It could be a little both.
yeah, creating the problem. That's that's the thing that we wonder about in mimics. I mean, and you've seen the same thing when it comes to people with extreme religious beliefs. They go off the deep end with their beliefs, and then pretty soon they're having all kinds of unusual phenomena that seems to be confirming their beliefs. But then it just keeps getting ramped up a notch till pretty soon, they've got a rifle on top of a bell tower because God has told them to go out and kill the unbelievers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so so that's that's kind of a long-winded response to why I don't think that you should go out of your way to initiate contact.
Well said, Tim. And one thing you said, some with obsession. One thing when you something engulfs in you, your existence, all your time, every thought. When you're obsessed with something, um, and that's why it's good to take a break. Try to you know, decon, just get away from everything, just back off and just do whatever, just back off from the research sometimes. Because when you get obsessed, when you go down these rabbit holes or obsessed with whatever it is that you're obsessed with, it can create these mind parasites or these egregores within your mind.
Right.
And it could play tricks, because like I said, we don't know what we're dealing with 100%. Yes, there could be, like we said, these beings, these entities coming from outside, from another planet. But what if the ones that are here already, you know, within this realm, they're just like this room that I'm in right now. My office is our 3D reality, but my house is Earth. My
Mm-hmm.
house is Earth, but this room particular is this reality our 3D reality that we live in. But these entities could be just living here. It's just that they are in the room next door, what we call another type of dimension, and they just come in and out of the door every now and then. But the thing is, we only see so much of the visible light spectrum. I've mentioned this, a lot over the many interviews that we see. I think it's less than 1% of the radiation field, the visible light field,
Mm-hmm.
and we just don't know what we're dealing with, and it can be dangerous, especially when you get obsessed, because it creates this environment within your mind, your subconscious, and allows you to for something to come into you, and it could mimic, or you could see something that's not really there. It could play tricks on your mind, playing tricks on your subconscious, make it go down all types of crazy roads, and that's probably why a lot of people, they get on these medications. They get, my wife, she's a psych nurse, and she maybe a lot of, and the mental uh the the mental psychosis, or just the mental disease that we face today in the world, is huge. Like the numbers, I forgot what she said, is huge. She gave me a certain percentage. I forgot what it is. It's going up every year, incrementally every year, with people with like bipolar schizophrenia, all types of mental disorders. It makes you wonder: are they just all from people just having just a mental breakdown, or maybe their mother was on drugs when it could be different things, or could it be some of them they just their their mind they couldn't handle it anymore, and it allowed for these negative entities just to possess them in some type of form that and just like you write about with the mimics.
Hmm. Well, I've said before, and it's not really. Don't misinterpret this as being trying to make a joke, but it is kind of like a bad joke. Just because you're schizophrenic doesn't mean that you're not actually seeing ghosts.
Yes, I told my
So
wife that too. I've told my wife
yeah.
that too.
But um, one of our writers in the book, Paul Eno, who is just a fantastic guy and has written several books on this idea. He thinks that we are dealing with with a with parasites, basically, other reality parasites, when it comes to a lot of this phenomena that we're talking about. He writes quite a bit about poltergeist activity, and he thinks that poltergeist, it's not spirits of the dead, it's not telekinesis from a child going through puberty, but is instead caused by these entities from another reality alongside of our own, but can work within ours and feed off of us, and that their main sustenance is human energy, especially extreme emotions like fear, and that the poltergeist phenomena is meant to elicit fear within close quarters. One family is targeted, you cause a lot of problems, and then just feast off of the fear and anger and other kinds of emotions, because generally poltergeist hauntings tend to occur in places where there is already an extreme dynamic taking place, in a household. So then you start throwing in strange phenomena, furniture moving around, knocks on the walls, to the point where you can't sleep at night. Everybody's angry, upset, scared, and it's like a smorgasbord, to these entities. They just eat it up, and Paul says this can extend out into other kinds of different mimic phenomena that we have been talking about. But he says that, and again, kind of like your question earlier about initiating contact with these things, he says that one of the best ways to break a poltergeist haunting is to, well, first of all, don't give it energy. Don't get, try not to get mad. Don't get scared. Sit around and tell jokes. He says that's one of the best things to do. He says that just drains that extreme energy that they feed off of. And and you see very similar types of phenomena with say like places like the Skinwalker Ranch, with what's been called the hitchhiker effect, and where you have people who have been to the ranch, and especially those who may have gone in there with a very extreme skeptical or debunking type of attitude, that, or I guess like a very macho attitude. You get these security guards who went in there, with their big guns and things. I'll shoot anything that I see, and then later they go home and the phenomena has followed them. And, I mean, they may live, a couple thousand miles away, yet they find that their house is being haunted, by very similar types of phenomena. And back to the mimics thing, this phenomena could also include, say, like weird people showing up on your doorstep late at night trying to sell encyclopedias or saying that they're passing out religious pamphlets, but we don't have our religious pamphlets. But maybe we can talk about UFOs or the Skinwalker Ranch or things like that. So it's very interesting how this phenomena can be both ghostly and physical almost at the same time. Uh, uh, and again, I mean, you could speculate endlessly like we do in the book, but we currently don't have any, easy answers to what's going on. But it's sure interesting, isn't
Mhm.
it?
And I tell you what, my wife, she made me before the show a strong cup of coffee. I am freaking wired. And then it helps whenever you have a good strong cup of coffee talking about some fascinating topics.
Oh yeah, well
But
that's I've got my monster here.
I I drink them every now and then. I used to drink them a lot when I was doing shutdown
Hmm.
work, paper mill, power
Oh,
plants, gas plants. When I was doing shutdown work, did that for like
right.
10 years. Um, and I got to where I was just drinking too many of them. They didn't do much, but a good
Yeah,
strong cup of coffee, man. Oh man. And I'm sure,
I know.
and I'm sure some of my listeners will be like, man, what is he on? He's like wound up, hyped up. But I think I guess we'll continue here, but I think John Keel talked about some of these in his own words, types of mind parasites, use different words in Operation Trojan Horse. Is that it?
Yes. Yeah.
Trojan Horse?
Um,
Or I forgot.
some our haunted planet was
Yes,
where
Haunted Planet. That's it.
yeah, that's where I got my inspiration for the name of the book. Because that's what John Keel called them in one of his chapter. He started out a chapter called "Mimics of Man," and it was kind of like just a throwaway couple of paragraphs that led to other stories dealing more with humanoid type of hominids, like Bigfoot and creatures like that. But John Keel talked about could there be uh, people's not the right word, but things, creatures that look like people that live, say, like in the busiest of cities. That would be considered like, hermits almost. You rarely ever see them, but because of the size of a big city, can basically, go unnoticed, but they're not human. They look human,
He called
but
them he called them elementals, didn't he?
elementals, yeah. Yeah, well, an elemental traditionally would be what you would think of as like a nature spirit, almost. But initially, Keel was suggesting that this was a physical species of maybe another type of animal that preys on people. We like to think that we are at the top of the food chain. Well, maybe we're not. Maybe there are other creatures on this planet that can look like us and blend in with us for the purpose basically of eating us. And that was Keel's, I mean, like I said, it was just a couple of throwaway paragraphs, but I always found that intriguing.
And then he
That there
talked
could
about, go ahead, Tim. I'm sorry.
no. Well, there's a movie. What is it? Species, I think is what it's called.
Mhm.
That like a specially bred species of cockroach, escapes and then evolves quickly to look like us enough that when you get close, then you can see that it's not a human, and then you get eaten.
Yeah. And then he I thought it was fascinating how of course I'm butchering what he said, but something like I guess it was Haunted Planet or maybe Trojan. I don't remember, but how whatever we're dealing with, they have a certain clock or to them. Like they like to show up on Wednesdays. They like to show up on, it seems like, the 24th of the month. A lot of strange things, and it makes you just wonder what exactly the hell is going on. I'm not saying all sightings, like encounters with entities or aliens or whatever happen on that. Of course, they happen every day of the week and every day of the year. But a lot of he did a big study back in the 60s or during the UFO flap. I think it was the 60s,
Hmm.
where that most sightings, and then I think he even said of like even just entities like maybe poltergeist or other things too. I think happen on a vast majority is Wednesdays. I think it was Wednesdays, and on the 24th of the month. And
Hmm.
it's just crazy. But let me move forward just a little bit, Tim. You see, got having to touch in my nose. It's almost like we're just shooting the shit here on the couch, just you and I.
Oh
I
yeah.
love it, man. So you talked about great innovators like Tesla.
Mhm.
I was watching one of your other interviews. I forgot which one it was from, but you talked about great innovators like Tesla, seemingly tapping into universal knowledge beyond ordinary human limits. Do you think intellectual geniuses like him and others might have a connection to beings like the others, or whatever this phenomena is, and could major inventions be influenced by paranormal phenomena in ways we don't fully understand, Tim?
Well, I do think that people like Tesla are they're born geniuses, basically. And I know a lot of people are like, well, duh. Of course they are. But it's I think that a lot of people who have later on become a well-known for their smarts weren't actually born that way. That they really had to. Einstein was a smart guy, but when he was younger, he struggled in academics, and it wasn't until later, I think, that his brain kicked in. But you have people like Tesla and Philo Farnsworth and T. Townsend Brown, who seem to have been born with that genius already lit in their brains and ready to go. And it could very well be, as I've talked about before, that they have that ability to tap into that universal knowledge base. The ancient called it the Akashic record. you know but I mean, the universe basically is information, and since we are part of the universe, we are also part of that big database in the sky, so to speak. So some of us have that ability to hone in on that, to tap into that knowledge base, and to make use of it. And of course, the typical physical constraints, make it so that you just you're not just a human computer just spewing out information to the point that you're locked away somewhere. But you look at also somebody like Prince. Prince was a musical genius, and he said that the music was constantly pouring out of his brain to the point that at times he couldn't sleep at night. The drugs didn't help either, but but he said that the music all of his life was just pouring out of his brain, and if he didn't write it down, he could possibly lose it, because there was new music constantly coming out. And I mean, that's why he's still, I mean, how long has it been since he passed away? And yet his library, he's got like he had this huge library of music that has never been released. So you have people like Tesla, I think, that are like that just the genius is just constantly pouring out of them. Now, you also asked if the mimics have maybe had an influence along these lines as well? And the answer is yes. I mean, you look throughout history, you will find instances of people who are working on some kind of idea, an invention, mathematics, cosmology, things like that. And it's kind of like the same scenario played out throughout history. They're visited by a mysterious stranger who leaves them hints about the direction that they should be going on whatever it is that they're working on. And then lo and behold, if they do actually follow those hints, they'll make that big breakthrough with whatever. And then that big breakthrough then has exciting consequences then throughout history. You get this one little seed planted that then grows into whole new fields of study. You have like the old alchemist, especially back in medieval times, who were looking for the philosopher's stone. Their belief was that this was something that could transmutate metals into gold, especially lead. They were looking for something like that. Well, these guys were also doing a lot of groundbreaking work in chemistry. They didn't realize it at the time. In chemistry, I don't even know if they even had that name yet. But some of these guys were then visited by what we would now call like men in black. Usually it would be like one individual, but they would be dressed like in all black clothes with a black cloak and a black hat that would come and talk to them. Sometimes, a one chance appearance, other times maybe for, a couple of weeks to a month, discussing scientific and philosophical questions. And then after these visitations, these alchemists would be like, wait a minute, eureka. They may not have ever discovered the philosopher's stone, but instead it led them into other developments into basic science and mathematics that we have today. And this is something that I think that we see happening still to this day. There's a physicist, gosh, I can't think of his name now. He's a pretty famous physicist, and he's pretty well known within the ranks of those of us who are researching the world of the weird, because when he was a kid, with really no interest in any of this kind of stuff, he got a phone call where this metallic voice on the other end said that, I'm talking to you from a flying saucer hovering over the earth, and we want to give you information and communicate with you that's going to change the world. And he said that he only got like 2 phone calls. And but his mom later said that it occurred throughout the summer. He doesn't remember these other phone calls, but she said that he got these phone calls all the time. And finally, it got to the point where that she got on the line and told this voice to stop bothering her son. And then that was the end of the phone calls. Well, then this guy, went on to become a very,
Jack Sarfati. Jack Sarfati.
That's him. That's him. Thank you. I knew I would massacre his last name. And
I'm assuming I'm saying that correctly. I
think you are, because I know Jack, and I would never want to go and mess his name up on the air. But he's an excellent example of somebody who seemed to have gotten this otherworldly nudge to start him on the fast track to genius. Now, would he have taken the same path if he hadn't gotten these phone calls? Who knows? But it's an interesting story And in fact, he was told at one point that to go on the roof of his apartment building and then make an appearance, and maybe take him with them, but he was to show up alone. But he brought a friend with him, and nothing ever happened. So he often thinks that because he had a friend with him, that he ruined his opportunity. But I don't know. Maybe that loss is mankind's benefit.
I wonder if that hurt his academic career when he came out talking about that. Because normally it does. Because
Well, yeah. I
well,
mean, I'm
because I
sure.
interviewed the guy. I'm sorry, Tim. I interviewed the
No, no, go ahead.
professor at LSU, Brooks. Forgot his last name, or Brooks Elwood, I think. Professor. He's talking about the mounds there on the LSU campus.
Okay.
And he stated that they're possibly the oldest structures in the United States. You know, and he talking about how the academics have to walk a fine line or they won't get funding and blah 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 blah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I'm sure it didn't help. Let me put it that way. But I mean, he is a theoretical physicist, and it's I think the understanding is that theoretical physicists can have some
A little leeway, yeah.
yeah, some extreme thinking, living habits, things like that. So, some people I think are given, um, maybe a little wider range of appeal, just because of that. But you're absolutely right, though. I mean, it can be the death knell to your career if you express interest in something that others consider um, fringe or fringe science. You look at some of these people who have expressed ideas that our civilization hasn't been the first technologically based civilization on this planet. Graham Hancock is who I'm thinking of, and has demonstrated, some really good examples of ancient artifacts that have been discovered over the years that seem to show that there was a prior civilization before the Ice Age, and possibly the Ice Age is what did it in. And his ideas have been condemned to the point where he has been accused of being a racist. Because he was saying that some of these examples of, say, like ancient megalithic structures shows an influence that may have come from someplace else. I don't think he's ever said that say like the Egyptians or the Maya or the Aztecs who built some of these absolutely fabulous and really head scratching megalithic structures. I don't think he ever said that they didn't do it. He was just saying that the science that they were using possibly came from an even more ancient source. And he often cites like some of their mythologies that talk about how when these civilizations were the people were still living in caves and beating each other over the head with sticks, that you had teachers either come out from the sea or from underground or even from the sky and teach them mathematics and agriculture, and that's how their civilization started. And so his speculation was that maybe these were remnants, people who survived whatever this cataclysm was in the past, and then we're trying to pass on their knowledge to the next surviving generations, who at this point we're back to the Stone Age. So new ideas have always been frowned upon in the scientific community. I mean, everyone likes to think that scientists are very open-minded, when it comes to these kind of things, but they're not. Very closed-minded. And even if you demonstrate the scientific method on some of these ideas, you're still going to have holdouts that will refuse to believe, anything that goes against what they were taught at university.
I like to go against the grain. I like to hear new
Yep.
ideas. I like to hear speculations, theories, and we can't, because if you just go by what the academic collective thought is of the time, you're really not going to evolve when it comes to expanding your knowledge of who we are, where we came from, and all of that. Because a lot of it boils down to money, or because these academics, they got to pay their bills, and
Yeah.
so I would like to just sit around a campfire or whatever with some of these academics and just really, like, what do you really think? Come on, just tell me off the record. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it probably be mind blowing with some of these academics that what they say officially compared to just shooting shit around a campfire. But
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree.
we're about to wind things up here in just a minute, Tim. But so you've talked about a lot of things, within your book, Mimics, other books, but based on mysterious cases you've researched, do any stand out, like, especially, I don't know, that maybe just perplexing, or can you give any perplexing examples that just defy conventional understanding of what's really going on with the phenomena? Because you've dealt with many cases. What do you think? And I'm asking you to speculate, Tim, of course, but because you you would be like Einstein 2.0 if you could, if you knew exactly what was going on. But what do you think is going on? I know that's a big, perplexing question, but what do you think is actually going on with this phenomena as of right
Right.
now?
Well, as for right now, I mean, I do think, first of all, that it is a real phenomenon that you're not just getting stories from crazy people or people who've just made mistakes. Um, and it's like I've said throughout this show, I think that, there's a possibility that we could be dealing with several different things at the same time that at least superficially look similar to each other. I think that, like you said at the beginning of the program, that there is a paranormal aspect to it, whatever the word paranormal means. I mean, and that's, you could do an entire show just, with trying to describe what that word means. So, I mean, does paranormal mean, you know, uh, ghostly, or, visitors from the dead, or things from other dimensions, other realities, not other dimensions, other realities, parallel realities, that sort of thing. I mean, I think that there is a predominant aspect with that, just due to the fact of the way that these things, tend to operate, appearing and disappearing mysteriously, an almost encyclopedic knowledge of things, especially the lives of the witnesses, their past, what's going on now, what's going to happen to them in the future. Uh, um, but there could also be physical creatures, like John Keel said, that aren't human but look like humans. That live amongst us, maybe to feed off of us, maybe just to, just to live their lives unnoticed. And there could very well be a few extraterrestrials thrown into that as well. I've never dismissed the extraterrestrial hypothesis. I just don't make that my be all and do all of theories, because there seems to be a lot more to what's going. Let's not forget time travelers. Could some of these events be visitors from another time? And again, may not be necessarily our own timeline. Will humans ever be smart enough, to work with time? There could be other species someplace else who have broken the time barrier, so to speak. So I know it's not very satisfying of an answer, but I don't think that there is just a one explanation for the mimic phenomena. And if you read the book and read all the cases that we included, and I should say also, naturally, in this past year since the book has come out, people are sending me these stories, and I run across other stories, and I'm like, oh, that would be so perfect, for the book. But yeah, I mean, I don't think that there is any one overarching theory that can embrace all of these things that we have discussed in the book. So I'm really going to have to say, I think it may be a little bit of a lot of things.
Exactly. And I would like to get you back on, and I'd like to get you back on sooner than later. And maybe we can discuss, well, first off, what do you have coming down the road? Any more, any other things that's in the works, books and things like that?
Yeah, we actually are in the final stages of putting together a book about the mysteries of time, and I haven't got a title yet to release, but we're really close to getting that out. And we've got a lot of the same people who wrote for Mimics involved in the Mysteries of Time book. And this will be a book that will deal with our concepts of time, how they've evolved over the centuries, and whether or not people's experiences with things like time slips and related phenomena may show that that time isn't exactly how modern physicists are saying it is. That there may be some caveats, so to speak, that we're able to experience a different realities, different times, uh, 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 possibly even a natural phenomena that shows us that. And I hate to use the word time travel, because that's so cliched anymore. But you have these experiences with people who have time slips that they seem to walk through a wormhole or a window and find themselves in a past or future time. And it sounds like time travel. If not, what is it?
John
Is
Teeter?
it
John Teeter?
well, John Teeter was a guy who said that he had a time machine.
Yeah.
That this was a mechanical time machine, but we've got tons of cases where people, these things just happen to them. So is there a natural phenomena that that shows that time and space are completely different than than we think than we think how it operates? So that's so far we're pretty excited about how that's coming out.
Well, Tim, I appreciate it, man. Can't wait to get you back on the show. And man, this was a treat, honor, and privilege to have you come on Beyond the Forbidden. And thank you very much, man.
Now you froze on me there, Michael.
Yep. Sorry. But I was just saying, it was
there
a treat. I was trying to cut that out, but Yep, it says connection is unstable. Good. We're about to end it anyways. It was a treat, honor,
All
and
right.
privilege. Thank you very much, Tim.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate you having me on today. I hope your audience enjoys this as well.